Unbroken, a story of healing and hope. The wails echoed into the evening sky as Amara held her husband's lifeless hand, cold and heavy in her own. Chidi was gone. The man who had laughed with her under moonlit skies, who built their dreams one stone at a time, was now silent. Her 4 children clung to her skirt, eyes wide with confusion and fear. How could she explain to them that their world had just crumbled? Days after the burial, when the earth still smelt of fresh sorrow, Chidi's relatives arrived, not to console, but to claim. They ransacked the house like vultures after a feast. The shop's ownership documents disappeared. The farm tools were hauled away. Even the worn mattress on which she and Chidi had once shared whispered dreams was ripped from their home. Amara pleaded, but tradition was a blade that cut her words down. "You are a woman," they sneered. "You own nothing." Left with nothing but 4 mouths to feed, an empty house, and a heart shattered beyond repair, Amara sat by the door at night, staring into the darkness. She prayed, she wept, she screamed into the silent night until she could no longer find her voice. But deep within the ruins of her spirit, a small ember still glowed. Amara wiped her tears, tightened her wrapper, and whispered into the winds, "I will not die like this." Tomorrow was coming, and she would meet it standing. Morning came, but it brought no comfort. The house, once filled with Chidi's laughter and the children's chatter, now echoed with a hollow silence. There was no money, no food, only debts and the whispers of neighbors who pitied her from afar, but dared not come too close. Amara scavenged through the remnants the family had left behind. A broken stool, a cracked pot, and a few tattered wrappers. The children's faces haunted her. Sunken eyes, silent questions she could not yet answer. By noon, the hunger pangs became unbearable. Amara tied a scarf around her head and went into the village square, her dignity tucked deep into her heart. She asked for work, any work. She scrubbed floors, carried firewood, fetched water from the stream for women who once looked down on her. Each evening, she returned home with a few coins and a small loaf of bread. She would slice it into 4 pieces, pretending she wasn't hungry so her children could eat. The nights were the hardest. Lying on the cold, bare floor, Amara would recall Chidi's promises. "We'll build a life so strong that no storm can tear it apart." She smiled bitterly at the memory. The storm had come, and it had torn everything apart. But somewhere between despair and duty, a stubborn resolve grew. One evening, after a long day of carrying baskets at the market, she sat under the mango tree by their house. Her fingers, cracked and sore, began to weave the palm fronds beside her, the way her grandmother once taught her as a girl. An old woman passing by stopped to watch. "You weave well," she said, her voice like dry leaves rustling. "You could sell baskets at the market, you know." Amara looked up, surprised. Sell baskets? Could she really? Hope stirred faintly in her chest, fragile, like the first shoot breaking through hard soil. That night, after putting the children to sleep, Amara stayed up by the dying fire, weaving her first basket. Her fingers bled, her back ached, but her spirit, for the first time in months, felt alive. In the ashes of yesterday, Amara began to sow the seeds of a new tomorrow. The rooster crowed before the sun even kissed the horizon. Amara hadn't slept much, but she didn't care. In her lap lay her first finished basket, imperfect, lopsided, yet beautiful in its own raw way. She ran her fingers across the rough edges and whispered, "This is just the beginning." Before her children woke up, she wrapped the basket in a piece of cloth and hurried to the market. Her feet were dusty from the long walk, but her heart beat with cautious hope. The market was alive, voices shouting, sellers bargaining, children weaving between legs like little goats. Amara found a small spot by the roadside, placed her basket down, and waited. Hours passed. People glanced at her basket but moved on. Discouragement began to gnaw at her chest. Just as she was about to gather her things and leave, a woman in a bright yellow head wrap stopped. She picked up the basket, examined it carefully, and smiled. "You made this?" she asked. Amara nodded, too nervous to speak. "It's strong. Good for carrying yams, the woman said, reaching into her purse. She paid Amara double the price Amara had even dared to hope for. Amara stared at the coins in her hand, disbelief washing over her like a flood. The woman patted her shoulder and said, "Bring more next week. Others will want too." Amara ran all the way home. That night, she cooked a small pot of yam porridge for the children. For the first time since Chidi's death, they laughed around a fire. Their cheeks, though still hollow, glowed with the warmth of food and a mother's triumph. Amara wept silently by the fire, tears of gratitude, tears of the first tiny victory. She knew it was just a basket, but to her it was proof that out of ashes, something could still be built, something strong. Weeks turned into months. Amara's hands toughened from weaving. Blisters formed and hardened into calluses, but she did not mind. Each market day, she carried bundles of baskets on her head, and slowly word spread. Customers sought her out, not just because her baskets were strong, but because there was something about them, something full of care, something honest. With each sale, she put aside a little. She mended the children's worn-out clothes with scraps. She bought a second-hand pair of shoes for Chika, her eldest son, whose toes had long since peeked out from the holes in his slippers. Some nights, after the children fell asleep, she would sit alone by the low burning fire and whisper into the darkness, "I am still here, Chidi. I am still standing." And deep within, she began to dream again, small dreams at first, a bigger hut, enough food every day, a future where her children would never bow in shame. But blessings have a way of attracting eyes, jealous, prying eyes. The husband's family, who had stripped her of everything, noticed her slow ascent. One morning, as Amara prepared to leave for the market, two of Chidi's uncles stormed into her compound. They demanded a share of her earnings, claiming that because Chidi had once tilled the land, they were entitled to anything his widow made. Amara stood there, trembling inside but refusing to show it. She thought of her children, of the baskets she had woven with bleeding fingers, and something steely rose inside her. "You took all you could from me once," she said, her voice low but firm. "You will take no more." They laughed and left, but the warning was clear. Her success would not go unchallenged. That night, Amara prayed, not for the uncles to fall, but for the courage to rise higher than their malice could ever reach. The next market day, a woman from the nearby city visited the village market. She spotted Amara's baskets immediately, their fine weave and sturdy handles. After buying a few, she asked where Amara learned her craft. "From my mother," Amara said simply. The woman smiled and handed her a card. "Come to the city. We need women like you. There's a cooperative. We export baskets abroad. You can earn more than you ever imagined." Amara stared at the card in disbelief. The city? Exporting abroad? Her? Fear whispered that she was just a poor widow from the village. But hope whispered louder. That night, she sat her children down and explained the opportunity. "It will not be easy," she said, "but if we want a different life, we must be brave." And they agreed. Together, they would step into the unknown. The journey to the city was not simple. Amara had to sell almost all her stock to raise money for the bus fare. She carried her youngest on her back, while the others clutched her wrapper tightly as they navigated the noisy, bustling city streets. Finding the cooperative was another trial. Endless asking for directions, getting lost twice. But when she finally stood before the tall iron gates and saw the rows of women weaving and chatting under shaded canopies, she knew she was home. She was welcomed warmly. They admired her baskets and offered her a place among them. Payment was better than she had ever earned, enough to send her children to a modest school nearby, enough to rent a tiny crumbling room, but a room of their own. Amara wept that night. She had crossed her river. She was no longer just surviving. She was beginning to live. Under the cooperative's mentorship, Amara learned new techniques, finer weaves, new designs, colors from natural dyes. Soon her baskets were not only sold locally, but featured in international catalogs. Her name, once scorned in whispers among her husband's relatives, now commanded respect among city traders. She started teaching other widows, women broken like she once was, how to weave hope into palm fronds. Together, they built more than baskets. They built dignity, self-worth, and futures. Her children grew strong and bright. Chika, once the shy barefoot boy, excelled in school. Nena, her daughter, spoke of becoming a lawyer to defend women like her mother. Each day, Amara thanked God for grace, for strength, for resilience, for the beauty born from her ashes. One evening, years after the darkest days, Amara stood at the threshold of a modest but beautiful home she had built with her own earnings. The children played under the mango tree. Laughter, pure, unburdened laughter, filled the air. She sat quietly, basket in hand, weaving not out of necessity but out of love. A neighbor approached, admiring her work. "Madam Amara," she said, "you are blessed. Your story is a testimony." Amara smiled, her heart swelling with quiet pride. "I am not blessed because I have wealth," she said. "I am blessed because I refused to break." She looked to the sky where the stars began to twinkle. "I am unbroken." And for the first time in a long, long time, she was at peace. Something lasting. And so under the blanket of the night, she wove another basket, and then another, and another, not just weaving palm fronds, but weaving back hope, thread by thread. Watch out for more life-intriguing stories on this channel. Please, if you like the stories I share, kindly subscribe and share with others.